So my mother's Spanish and my father's English. Both of them met, got together, and had 4 children. I'm the youngest of the 4. And every year when we were growing up, we used to go to Spain. So we lived in England and went to Spain in the summers. So when I was about 11 or 12, I went to a deaf school here in England. And every year I could not stand thinking about going to summer school in Spain. Every time summer was coming around, I would cry and cry and cry. And I would explain that I just did not want to go to a deaf summer school in Spain for the summer. All my friends did not understand what I was so upset about, why I didn't want to be involved, why I was getting so emotional. And I said, you don't understand. If you went to Spain, you'd understand. But they really didn't get it. And I kept saying, if you went, you'd understand why I really don't want to go. So, in the end, I went to Spain. I was going with my cousin. As our families were so determined to force us to go, both of us went together, and both of us were just as upset as each other. It was so beautiful outside, and yet we were forced to sit down and study. And we had a teacher, and she'd speak English to us, and also a bit of Spanish. But as she was a deaf-friendly teacher, most of the time she was signing to us. So when I was really small and growing up, I began to realise that languages could be so different. Sign languages were just the same. They were all different too. So when I was about 12, I realised the exact differences between the sign languages. So I'd go to Spain and then come back, come to England, and everybody was signing. And I thought I was exactly the same as I always was. So I'd start signing and I realised that no one understood what I was talking about. They all signed like this. Their ABCs, and I signed this for my ABCs. Also, they were signing this for mother and father, and this is how I signed mother over in Spain. The way they signed family was completely different as well. Brother and sister, for example, this is how they sign it in England, and over in Spain, this is how they sign it. It was completely different and a massive shock to me. The days of the week, for example, they were completely different. This is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So just completely different. And that's when it really hit me. That's when I began to realise the complete differences between languages. But I picked up English Sign Language again fairly quickly, and it wasn't a problem. And then when I went back to Spain, I realised that they couldn't understand British Sign Language, and so I modulated and changed to Spanish. They are completely different. But as I've been travelling around, I went to France and Italy, and as I tried to sign Spanish Sign Language to them, they didn't necessarily understand. There's a few similarities, but really there's a lot of differences. Maybe most of it's the same, but really there's still differences that you need to change. So I began to develop a bit of international sign language. I was using my experience from British Sign Language, Spanish Sign Language, and they all came together to create some sort of international sign. And when I was signing in France, everyone seemed to understand. Something else that's different is the culture. British deaf culture and Spanish deaf culture are completely different. For example, in Spain they do have deaf clubs, but it's sort of like an open meeting. Everyone's very direct, very blunt. There's no wasting time trying to get to your point. Everyone's just so forward. British deaf culture, everyone wastes their time not really talking about what they're feeling. They'll take ages zigzagging trying to get to their point. Maybe they'll talk to someone else until they realise that that other person agrees with them, and then eventually they'll try and get to their point. I find it so frustrating. Like, why can't everyone just mix and be honest with how they're feeling? Just get straight to the point. I don't really understand why the British deaf culture do that. It's beyond me. Also, in British deaf culture, there's a lot of cliques. There's a lot of small groups, people being very private and only spending time with their own deaf friends and not really socialising. Whereas Spanish deaf culture, everyone sits in a massive group. There's no kicking anyone out. There's no exclusivity. So in British deaf culture, I'll spend a lot of time trying to fit into a group and finding it really hard to try and talk to everyone. Sometimes I'll spend ages trying to get everyone's attention and no one really looks at me. Sometimes it really hurts my feelings. But I've learnt to accept it over time. They're just two different cultures.